I am a firm believer that if you do the work, you should get paid for the work that you do. And I mean that entirely. Meaning not having a portion of your wages expropriated to the top, to a capitalist class, for them to essentially avoid taxes and invest that money into the political system that is used to, let's say, advance their interests that much more, meaning more wealth for themselves. I wish I was not alone in that belief, but we have a capitalistic system where people are born into, and from the time they're infants to the time they drop dead, they are told that this is the greatest system on the planet. This is the only system that could be. Everybody are Fukuyamas. Essentially, this is the end of history. The Soviet Union fell apart, so suck it. Well, we are having a resurgence in this country from socialists, Democratic Socialists of America. There are two in Congress, and now we have several throughout the United States. One particular senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, has introduced, he browbeat Jeff Bezos into upping the wages to $15 an hour. And they're trying to do something similar to Walmart. Walmart has notoriously low wages, and they're trying to make this argument that we're not going to allow you to buy back your stocks if you're not paying your people $15 an hour. Yes, it's a start, but look, if you bake the bread, if you sweep the aisles, if you serve the coffee, if you write the software programs, if you cut the lights on, all of those things are aspects of labor. If you're doing the work, you should get paid for the work that you're doing. This idea that you need a CEO in order to run that is nonsense. You are perfectly capable. You and the people that are around you in that company and making decisions on what's best for you and your life in a democratic way. Meaning democratic decisions within the company structure itself. Now, this is literally workers owning the means of production, but this is also giving workers more agency in what they're doing. This is not what Sanders is doing. I'm saying this is what Sanders should be doing. You're calling yourself a socialist, for God's sake. If you're going to make the argument, make the argument. Why be half-ass about it? Take a plank out of the capitalistic system in and of itself. I mean, this is nice, but let's be honest. All of these things are these piecemeal ways of trying to force capitalists to do stuff. Fuck forcing them to do that stuff. Eat the rich. When you're going to make that argument as a socialist, make that argument as a socialist. Workers should own the means of production. Full stop. There's no hedging that at all. There shouldn't be this capitalist class. The goal of the lefties should be the elimination of that class. Now, yes, that's a little further out than Sanders is willing to go, but that's where I am. I am fundamentally clear that part of the problem, and a large part of the problem in our society, is this break between one class versus another class. And even though we're supposedly all created equal, we're not all created equal. There are some people who are created more equal than others. And I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about issues of class. This idea that the Waltons are able to expropriate all of this wealth from the people who do all the labor is nonsense. The workers themselves can do and make the determinations on what needs to take place for that company. And I guarantee you this, if it's your job that may be up to be exported, you're going to have a say-so in that. If you want to have higher wages, well, you're not going to say, let's pay somebody millions of dollars or $40 billion while I'm making minimum wage. Nobody in their right mind is going to say that. If you're going to be a socialist, be a socialist. For fuck's sake. Stop Walmart Act. It's not that I hate the Stop Walmart Act. It's just all of the stuff is this piecemeal, arm behind the back stuff. Make the argument to workers. That, do you want more agency in your position? Yes or no? Do you want higher wages in your position? Yes or no? Do you believe that the wealth that you, the work and the labor that you do, should be expropriated to the top 1%? 95% of the wealth went to the top 1%. That is insane. And we're having this conversation about trying to arm twist people to get them to pay people better wages. Here's the catch. In this particular capitalistic system, they are not going to want to pay you better wages, because paying better wages will mean they get less. The entire point in this is to maximize their profit. The entire point in this, find items and production costs to lower the production costs and lower labor costs. Lower the amount that I pay the people to come who sweep the floors and do the dishes and who write the software programs and who bakes the bread. Essentially the people who do all of the roles in that company, and allows for the one small percent at the top to get fat off of their labor. At which point do we get to in a society to say, in the same way that we chop the heads off of the kings and queens, that we could do the same thing for the capitalist class? You, as a person, as you go about your way doing your job, should you or should you not get paid the money for that job? And again, I ask the question, why do you want that wealth expropriated to a top 1%? And beyond that point, why do you want a small body of people making all of the decisions for thousands of people within the corporation structure itself? It's not that I hate it. It's just that I hate it. Just saying. Let's look at the bill. Stop Walmart Act. Sanders and Ro Khanna bill would outlaw stock buybacks for corporate giants that don't pay $15 an hour. Clearly, I don't hate it per se. If you're a Democrat and you're pushing this, that's probably a long way for you to go. That's a long plank. Fair enough. But if you're telling me you're a socialist, then be a socialist. Don't give me half-ass stuff. Be a socialist. Make the argument. Let me get to the details. Sanders and Ro Khanna will officially unveil the new bill at the press conference on Thursday morning. While named after Walmart, which has been notorious for its low pay and poor working conditions, Sanders and Ro Khanna's legislation takes aim at the companies with over 500 employees, many of which are currently on record-shattering stock buyback spree, thanks to President Donald Trump's $1.5 trillion tax cuts. As the Washington Post reports, the Stop Walmart Act would bar big corporations from buying their own stock, a move that rewards shareholders unless they pay all their employees $15 an hour, provide them with 7 days a week sick leave, and prevent CEO compensation from rising above 150 times the median employee pay. 150 times. Jesus Christ. Given that the starting wage for the Walmart employees is $11 an hour, which translates to $90,000 a year, income below the federal poverty line for families of 3, Sanders and Ro Khanna's legislation will be enormously beneficial for millions of workers, at little cost to the immensely profitable retail giant and its owners. Of course, Walmart can pay its workers a decent wage. They just don't. They don't for the same reason other companies don't, because it allows them to maximize their profit. And if they have to pay workers more, that means they get less. The incentive structure is the issue. This is trying to force them to do something that the incentive structure doesn't want them to do. Destroy the incentive structure. Eliminate that incentive structure by getting rid of the capitalist class. We have this thing of unions, and these unions are fighting the capitalist class, and each one is struggling and fighting just to get their own ends. Break the contradiction. The contradiction here is the fact that you have a union and a capitalist class. Get rid of the capitalist class. You don't need them. The one that does all the work is the labor. Labor is the only component to this that you require in this mix. Allow the people themselves to own the production. And I understand you can't necessarily take away people's corporations, but any new company that starts, yes, should go with that model that it's a democratic environment, a democratic site. Workers determine themselves how they're owned, how the resources are distributed, and make the decisions on what that company needs to do, and how that company survives. It's not a perfect solution, but this is workers owning the means of productions in a literal sense. And if you're trying to eliminate that particular class, that's one way to do it. If you're trying to give people higher wages, that's the way to do it. If you want to prevent jobs from being exported overseas, that's the way to do it. Nobody in their right mind is going to vote to allow somebody to get millions of dollars while they get minimum wage. It's not going to happen. But I don't hate it as a start, I guess. But I kind of do hate it. If you're going to be a socialist, be a socialist. That's all. Yes, I'm ragging on this. I am ragging on this. And I don't mean to rag on this. But it is what it is. That's how I feel about it. I appreciate what Sanders is doing with this. But if you went to a worker and you asked them, would he want more agency in his job? Would he want more pay in his job? They would probably say yes. They just don't know any better. And because they don't know any better, and this system is the only system they know, it doesn't necessarily form in their mind to think of, well, hey, can we be arranged in a different way? I'm saying make the argument of arrangement in a different way. Put legislation out with this idea of expanding worker co-ops that the government is putting forth. If you're talking about a green energy new deal, I'm just saying, man, it's, yes, punish Walmart, punish Bezos with this kind of shaming, browbeating. But this doesn't get to the crux of the issue. And the contradiction is always there, and all the incentives always still go towards maximizing profit. Until you deal with that contradiction, this stuff is nice, but this stuff is to some degree for show. It will benefit people. Don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me. I don't want to give that impression that it won't. And yes, Walmart should be paying its people better wages. And yes, that's all that's true. But it's half-ass. It's always half-ass. Eliminate the capitalist class in this. You don't necessarily have to make this argument against capitalism, but you can make this argument for worker co-ops. Look at what Corbyn is doing. These guys are putting forth an agenda to massively expand worker co-ops and giving a percentage of people's companies to the employees so they can have decision space within the companies themselves. By comparison, this just seems so half-assed. But just saying. I'll leave this here. That was the early 80s, the Feminist News Network. I guess my feeling is, why do we need a New Deal? Right? Why do we need a New Deal? We need to go beyond the basics of unions and this type of piecemeal stuff. Yeah, I'll end this here. I don't want this one to go too long. This shit will help mostly red states knowing how many people are getting paid like $8 to $9 an hour. Look, I am not disagreeing that this won't be beneficial and this won't help. This will help. This will be beneficial. So, fair enough. Yeah, it'll be beneficial. That's not my argument. It's not my argument at all. Alright, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.